All right. Good morning. Welcome into the Out of Bounds show, ESPN 1059 The Zone. We're driven by your next GMC Sierra truck at Fowler GMC Pearl Brandon. Hop on their website, fowlergmc.com, and shop the best selection of GMC Sierra trucks, pre-owned and new, at Fowler GMC. We've been talking about Hall of Famer, manager, GM, Bobby Cox all morning. And growing up a TBS kid like y'all did, and with Dale Murphy, and then going into the 90s, and they've even won a World Series as of late, and they're winning this year. But for so much of my childhood, the Braves didn't win. I mean, you had Murph with the NL MVPs, but not a lot of playoff appearances. And then, boom, we all know what happened with Bobby Cox going from general manager to manager, and John Sherholtz and that whole deal. We thought it'd be a good time to bring in Ben Ingram from Jackson, Mississippi, Madison, Mississippi, play-by-play voice of the Atlanta Braves. That never gets old. And Ben joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Ben, good morning. Thanks for getting up, my man.
Hey, good morning. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. So I think I have this right. You've been with the Braves since 2011?
Yeah. Moved to Atlanta in 11.
Okay. And so Bobby stepped down in 2010?
Yeah, he retired in 10, exactly.
But I know he's been around the franchise, and you've been doing this for a long time with the Braves. You've talked to so many former Braves players, people in the front office, and so on. What's the common thread when guys talk about Bobby Cox behind closed doors? Why did players absolutely love playing for him, Ben?
Probably loyalty more than anything else. And if you want to get to know a guy, if you want to get to know a manager, go talk to his players. And there are hundreds and hundreds of players who played for Bobby. And that's what they'll tell you is loyalty. I've heard countless stories of players, teams who fell short, maybe went to the World Series but lost, and disappointed that they didn't win, but more disappointed that they didn't do it for Bobby. That seems to be the common thread. I was chatting with Walt Weiss yesterday, our manager here, and of course he was part of the '99 team that went to the World Series. And he said, "I thought we were going to win the World Series." They ended up being swept, and he felt like the disappointment of not winning it for Bobby was greater than the disappointment of just not winning it for himself individually or for the team. They felt like they let Bobby down. But Bobby was a guy who, no matter if you were 0 for your last 20, 0 for your last 30, when the cameras came in, when the microphones came on, he was always standing up for his players to the media. And he understood how hard the game was. He played in the big leagues for a couple of seasons. I mean, he was teammates with Mickey Mantle when he first came in. Some really, really good teams for the Yankees there in the 60s, managed by Ralph Houck, and he learned a lot from Ralph and others. I just think that that's the common thread, to answer your question best, is how much these players loved the loyalty that Bobby showed them and how he treated them as their players.
He's been sick for a while. As someone who's so entrenched with the Braves organization, could you feel the heaviness of it for a while, Ben?
Oh, yeah, and that's another impressive thing about Bobby, too. I mean, this stroke that he had took place in 2019. I mean, he lived for 7 years with his stroke. The night he had his stroke, as tough of a guy as he was, there are a lot of people that said he should have died that night. He crawled to his neighbor's house. There wasn't anybody in his home. He was by himself, and after his stroke, he crawled across the yard to his neighbor's house to call for help. And to live as long as he did after that stroke just shows you how tough of a guy he was. I mean, obviously we're familiar with the ejections and that kind of thing. But when he was playing, if you want to go back to his playing career, a big reason that he was there, he was almost like an enforcer with that Yankees team. There are legendary stories about being out on the town in New York alongside Mickey Mantle, and somebody might smart off, somebody might say something if Mickey had gone 0 for his last 10 or something like that. And Bobby was the guy who would intervene, sometimes physically. He was a tough dude. And I think that's impressive with thinking about the last few years, just how tough he was, just living as long as he did. And certainly the heaviness of all that was there. I think we all thought for years, since 2019, the day that finally came could have been coming any day. And the fact that he lived another 7 years and even made it out of the ballpark one day last year is really amazing.
Wow. Play-by-play voice of the Atlanta Braves, Ben Ingram, on the Out of Bounds show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Having been around this for over 15 years, can you describe the relationship between Bobby Cox and Leo Mazzoni?
I think you'd say loyalty as well. I mean, Bobby gave Leo an opportunity, and Leo came in, and Leo was a guy who had been managing and coaching in the minor leagues. And I think, was chatting with Leo, at least what he's told me, is that when Bobby gave him an opportunity to come to the big leagues, he knew that he had to be good immediately. He knew that he had to come up and be an instant hit, or else Bobby would be going on to the next guy. I think Leo is a guy who came along at such a good time because he was such a good voice for those pitchers that we had. And we had so many, obviously, Hall of Fame pitchers. There are 3 Hall of Fame pitchers here. And Leo understood what he had, just let them play to their strengths. I don't think Leo tried to reinvent the wheel when it came to Maddox and Glavine and Smoltz. Leo learned a lot about pitching and coaching pitching from Johnny Sane. And I think he just took that and brought everything he learned and brought that to what Atlanta had. They came along at a perfect time. And of course, anytime you have a pitching coach and manager who are together for 15 years, you're going to have some butting of heads. I mean, they're kind of like brothers. Yeah. But I think that Bobby let Leo do his thing, and Leo ultimately respected Bobby more than anything. Whatever Bobby said, that was the final word. That was the letter of the law. And that was going to be what was going to go. So he couldn't have picked a better pitching coach to have alongside of him.
And what about Bobby Cox and Snitker's relationship and how close and powerful that was?
Snit would talk about Bobby like he was his father. And, I mean, when we won the World Series in 2021, that very night, as the celebration is going on, Snit repeatedly said, "I just wish Bobby could be here." And he'd say, I can't wait to take this trophy back to Atlanta and take it to Bobby's house." I think the way that he spoke of Bobby was the same way you might speak of your own father, from the standpoint of, "I can't wait to see how proud my dad is going to be of me for this thing that I've accomplished." That's what I drew from Snit on that. Snit modeled his managerial game after Bobby Cox. There's no doubt about that. And Bobby, and I think lots of guys did. But when Snit was in the organization as long as he was, 50 years, he got to see Bobby wearing a couple of different hats. Snit wore every single hat you could possibly wear in the organization, from playing to minor league coaching to minor league roving to third base coach to managing himself. And when Bobby brought Snit in to be his third base coach, that was the ultimate honor for Snit. And then to eventually become the manager of the Atlanta Braves and win a World Series just like Bobby did, he modeled his entire managerial pattern after Bobby. And I think treating players the way that Bobby treated them, I think that's what I'm really talking about more than anything, because Snit strived to do that. He strived to protect his players and be there for his players and stand up for his players as much as he could. I think that's maybe the biggest takeaway that he had from learning under Bobby.
You've been around this for a while, and you travel with the team, and you see what's going on behind the scenes. If you could put your finger on one thing that makes a successful Major League Baseball manager, between watching Weiss and Snitker and following Bobby Cox and other managers in the MLB, what would it be, Ben?
It takes a lot of patience. I'll tell you that. It takes a lot of patience because you're dealing with 26 players every single night. And you think about the word manager, that's exactly what you're doing. You're not just managing talent, you're managing personalities. You have to understand exactly what it takes to get enough out of your one guy over here and what it takes to give a kick in the pants to a guy over here. You also have to know how to handle the bullpen. That might be the hardest thing to do in this day and age of Major League Baseball, is handling your bullpen, getting guys up, getting them in, pressing the right buttons, knowing the matchups, things like that. But I think you also have to be extremely relatable. You have to be very good with people, because you are involved with individuals all the time, every single day. This isn't like the NFL or the NBA. This is every single day. We're around each other. We're around the team and the coaching staff and the traveling party more than we're with our families, more than we're with our friends, more than people are with their children. So I think you have to be extremely patient because you are constantly surrounded by people who are always looking for something from you, always looking for information from you. And then you add in the media side of things, having to answer for the decisions that you made. So I think a lot of patience has to be involved. You have to absolutely love this game because you're completely entrenched in it, and you have to manage these personalities every single day to the best of your ability, and it is a very challenging job.
Ben Ingram, play-by-play voice of the Atlanta Braves on the Out of Bounds show, driven by your next GMC Sierra truck at Fowler GMC. Even now in 2026, Ben, do you feel the presence of Ted Turner, Bobby Cox, and John Sherholtz even today in the Braves organization?
Without a doubt. I think where that really stands out, Bo, is probably when we go on the road. And this last road trip is a classic example of that. When we were in Colorado and Seattle and Los Angeles, we're a long way from home on this last road trip. And we go on the road, and I look down the third baseline behind our dugout, and there are thousands of Braves fans in all three of these different venues. And I'd say the same thing for when we go to name any other city. You see so many Braves fans. And I think that's the impact of the Superstation. I think you have multiple generations of fans, probably as young as mid-30s, all the way up into probably their 70s, who grew up watching the Braves on TBS. And that wasn't designated simply for folks in the Southeast. That wasn't limited to people just around the Southeast. That was across the country. And you have so many generations of fans who grew up miles from Atlanta, flights from Atlanta, who were humongous Braves fans and still are to this day. To me, that's the impact of Ted Turner, and that's the impact of Bobby and John, because you had a winner on the field and you had a businessman who could put it out there. And for so many years, I mean, Ted was trying to do his best to sell a product that wasn't all that good, and he was still just a brilliant businessman. But then when the Braves got good, and all of a sudden they start winning and going to the World Series, they had this amazing story of worst to first and all these young players coming up and coming to the big leagues and doing the unthinkable. And he has that product to blast out there to the entire country. And that was really a special thing. I don't know that you could have that in this day and age of media, the way that media is constructed. But back then, to put that product out nationally, when we go to these cities, even to this day, years after the Braves are even on the Superstation, and you still have people coming up to you and saying, I was a TBS kid. I grew up watching the Superstation. I grew up in Seattle, Washington. I grew up in Boise, Idaho. I grew up in Sacramento, California, watching the Atlanta Braves. That is such an amazing thing because there are thousands and thousands and thousands of accounts just like that, and it's because of the men you just mentioned.
Incredible. Ben Ingram on the Out of Bounds show with the Atlanta Braves, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. You know, Ben, you're younger, but you know all about this, younger than me. But, you know, pro sports in the South just wasn't any good when I was growing. I mean, the Braves and Falcons and Saints, just for the most part, were not that good. And so when this all flipped with Ted Turner and Bobby going to the field as manager and Sherholtz, it gave us a winner. And like you said, the TBS Superstation, we were already in through the Murphy years and so on. But the fact that they won 14 straight division titles and the World Series, it was a winner that we didn't have in the SEC footprint, right? At the pro sports level.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think you have everybody who has their own individual taste when it comes to college athletics, but everybody together was pulling for the one team of the region when it came to baseball. Like you mentioned, the Saints were far from winning a Super Bowl. I mean, the Falcons still haven't. And it was a region that was without any kind of professional sports identity, I'd say. It was up for grabs. It was an empty chair. And when the Braves did that, it's one of the best runs in the history of Major League Baseball. But when you add into the equation, everything that you're talking about, it only enhances the entire experience for the people who were following it the entire way. I think about Dale Murphy, and Murphy obviously is not in the Major League Hall of Fame. He won a couple of MVPs, The team never did any winning with him, and there isn't a whole lot that stands out about Murph outside of, I'm talking about the teams that he played for that would attract fans. Obviously, Murph was a tremendous player, had an amazing career, but those teams never did anything that made you proud for the most part. I mean, you had those teams at 82, at 83 that were pretty good, but outside of that, so many losing teams. And all to me, the only thing that Braves fans had to hang their hat on in those times was Dale Murphy, was number 3. He was the team.
Yeah.
He was the franchise. Yeah. And that's really all that people in the Southeast had, was maybe their baseball team wasn't winning, but you had this really great player in Dale Murphy. So to have all that change, and all of a sudden you have multiple to-be Hall of Famers on the team, a Hall of Fame manager, a winning team, winning pennants and winning a World Series. I mean, it really is overwhelming, the turnaround that took place to go from where they were in the 70s and 80s. They never won a single playoff game in the 70s or the 80s. And to turn that around, I mean, I'd imagine Braves fans then were thinking, well, all we have is a player like Dale Murphy. We'll never have a hope beyond that. And to turn that around in the early 90s and see what that team did and the run that they went on is really an amazing thing to take place.
Ben Ingram on the Out of Bounds show. Ben, what's it like? You just mentioned all the guys that eventually got to the Braves in the 90s and the Hall of Famers from Chipper to Maddox and everybody in between. But what's it like when they're all around? Like when Maddox, for whatever's going on, Maddox, Smoltz, Glavine, Chipper, Andrew, when they're all around, what is it like? And are you like, I need to pinch myself because we got all these guys and they're in Cooperstown that all played for the same team?
Yeah, I think so. And it's funny how down to earth a lot of those guys are. I mean, I see Andrew and I see John and I see Chipper all the time. And it never gets old when they call you by your first name. I mean, I was in Chicago last summer and Andrew came to dinner with us. Whenever we're on the road and we have the Fox National broadcast and John's working the game, I can't get him out of our booth because he just wants to come in and talk all the time and brag about his golf game.
I love it.
And it's so funny because he'll just interrupt any conversation you're having, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking this never gets old because John Smoltz just parades right on in here and he just holds court, and we just have a lot of fun doing that. Same thing for when I go down to the cage before a game and Chipper's down there and I can ask him about hitting. I can ask him what he's seeing for this one player or whatever it may be. And they're so approachable and they're so likable. That you're right. I mean, you do pinch yourself, and it's fun to be a part of this organization just because of the access that you have and the relationships that you build with these players. I'd say the same thing about Tom Glavine because he's done a pretty good amount of TV games for the Braves over the years, and Tommy just he's one of the guys and just wants to hang out. I think that's the amazing thing is you'll scroll through your phone and you'll see Chipper Jones' name in your phone, and you can just text him if you want to. Still, the 15-year-old me sees that and is just thinking this is just the craziest thing to be around guys like this. But they're so accessible, they're so great, and they're legends, of course, not just in this town but in the game altogether. Was Bobby Cox actually underrated nationally because he managed in Atlanta instead of a blue blood town like New York or Boston, Ben? I think that, I mean, you win 2,500 games. I mean, I guess to a degree you might could say perhaps. And the reason I say that is because you could look at the wins, you could look at the records and the division titles and the World Series and all that. And I don't think he was necessarily underrated from that regard. 4 times manager of the year. But I don't think people could really understand what he meant to his teams. And going back to kind of where we started, what he meant to his players. I just don't think, and how could people know that, right?
Right.
I don't know that they could completely understand what he meant to his players. And maybe from that regard, underrated. But I think a lot of times people viewed him right there alongside La Russa and Torrey and any other manager of the day and had him right there towards the top. But anytime you have a manager who's around that long and wins for that long, there's just no way the public can fully grasp what he means for those teams. And maybe from that perspective, a little bit underrated.
All right, let's switch gears. What was it like for you to be a part of a World Series champion team start to finish in 2021?
Pretty overwhelming, to be quite honest. It's what you dream of doing, but it's still, when it happens, it still comes with a level of amazement that it actually happened. And I'll tell you this, once you do it once, you're hooked. I mean, the needle's in the arm at that point. You just want to do it again. That's all you want to do. And going through seasons like we had last year was a very disappointing season. And all you can think of is, gosh, will we ever get to do 2021 all over again? Because I feel like I'm 1,000 light years away from doing that again. Then you have years like 2023 where the team won 104 games, and it felt like we're going to go right back there, and then they lost in the first round of the playoffs. It just shows you how hard it is for it all to align and actually win the thing. And I'd make the argument that what happened in 2021, the way that it happened, to a degree, you could make the argument that it was more enjoyable than the team that goes wire to wire. I don't want to say that you're ever going to lose enjoyment from winning the World Series, but the unpredictable nature of how the Braves won it in 2021, to me, enhanced the experience because we didn't even have a winning record until August of that year. No team in the division had taken off. We had had a terrible season for 4 months, and then at the trade deadline, multiple trades were made, and all of a sudden it was just a stroke of luck, and it all just connected and hit, and they took off. And with each passing round, we're looking around at each other. I'm looking at Joe and my producer and thinking, how are we doing this? How are we still playing and beating the Dodgers and beating the Astros? To be a part of something like that is truly overwhelming. And I think of other broadcasters who are significantly more legendary than I could ever be, guys who have been doing this for decade upon decade, who never got a chance to do what I got to do. Bob Uecker never got to call the final out of a World Series. There are so many countless broadcasters who never got that opportunity, and I just count myself as incredibly fortunate and grateful that I was a part of one, and I hope to do one again at some point.
What was when you were calling the championship game? And what was that like? I mean, you've called a lot of games, you've been in the thick of it, but what was it like as you got into the 7th and 8th and 9th inning? Did you have butterflies? What's it like in the booth when that's playing out and you're calling the game right in front of you of a team that could win a world championship?
Yeah, the game was interesting because it wasn't a down to the wire game. We had a 7-0 lead. Freddie Freeman hit a homer in the 7th inning, and we went up 7-0. And I sent it to break after the top of the inning, and at that moment it really hit me. You need to start thinking this is going to happen tonight. We're up 7-0. We're going to the bottom of the 7th. This is probably going to happen. And it wasn't like it was a tie game or a one-run game where you're just locked into the game. Being up 7-0 kind of lent itself to this moment where you kind of took a step back and looked around and thought, okay, you got to be ready for this. And that can be hard because as a play-by-play broadcaster, everything that we do is reactionary. Everything that we do, we're watching the game, a play happens, you react to it. In other words, you're not thinking about what you're going to say. You're not thinking about or premeditating what your actions or your words are going to be. And when it's 7-0, that starts creeping into your mind. And I was trying to block that out because I don't want to plan anything. I don't want to prepare anything. I want it to be all natural and just come out the way that it comes out. So I was just so locked in because I wanted to be accurate. I wanted to focus on getting every detail right because these are forever calls. Once the moment happens and I make the call, whatever comes out, that's like etching it in stone. There's no going back and editing it. There's no changing it. It has to be accurate and it has to be perfect. And I don't feel like I blinked for about the last 3 innings of that game just because I was just so freaking locked in to everything that was happening and trying to make sure that it was all perfect and putting a lot of pressure on myself, really. But it was fun, Bo, to have the thing done and the call was made and the moment was captured and put out there into the air and knowing that I was proud of what came out.
This may be a tough one, but who's your favorite player to date to cover since the last 15, 16 years for the Braves?
If I were to start with our team right now, I'd say Chris Sale's at the very top of the list. I mean, I love covering Chris. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame one day. He's closing in on 3,000 strikeouts, and he's just a dude, man. I mean, he's such a great guy to have on the team. He has absolutely zero ego, and he's been one of the best pitchers of the last 20 years. He's on that list. I'd have Max Fried on the list because I was there to watch Max Fried go from minor league prospect to bullpen reliever to starting pitcher to all-star pitcher to a guy who won the final game of the World Series. And just loved being around Max, and I wish we could have kept him. I hate that he went to the Yankees, but I just loved having him and watching his career. He's certainly on the list. Going all the way back to when I first started, my second year with the Braves with Chipper Jones last year. So I got to cover Chipper's last 2 seasons as a Brave, and that was way up there towards the top of the list for me. I'd say Matt Olson's on the list. I'd have Freddie Freeman on the list as well. I mean, Freddie might be the best hitter I've ever covered. And to be around him and see his career in the same vein as I spoke about Max, I called Freddie Freeman's games when I was with the Mississippi Braves. Yeah. And then coming to Atlanta and getting to call his games here and his MVP season in 2020 and a World Series in 2021, certainly really, really, really special. So I'd probably start the list right there. Those are some of my favorite players that I've called.
Ben Ingram. Play-by-play voice of the Atlanta Braves from here, joining us on the Out of Bounds show, kind enough to give us some time on Bobby Cox, Ted Turner passing away in the same week, and just the impact that the Braves and the Superstation and TBS had on all of us, or most of us, growing up. Ben, congratulations on all the success, and we can't thank you enough for the time today. We appreciate it, man.
Thank you. I always enjoy coming on back in Mississippi. I appreciate it, Bo.
Ben Ingram, play-by-play voice of the Atlanta Braves, does a great job. Incredible story. And now he's called a World Series championship team in 2021. They're playing well this year. Had a great year in 2023. They continue to win. And he said you can still feel the kind of the vibe, presence, and culture of Ted Turner and Bobby Cox and John Sherholtz even today. We're live in the Bank Plus studio, Out of Bounds, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN, brought to you by award-winning Elijah Craig Bourbon. It's fantastic neat on the rocks or with an old-fashioned. And Elijah Craig small batch, only $33 at your wine and spirits store, including Briarwood Wine and Spirits. Award-winning Elijah Craig Bourbon is the official bourbon of the Out of Bounds show.